In Buddhism, karma refers to the law of cause and effect, where intentional actions, whether positive, negative, or neutral, shape one's present and future experiences. It emphasizes that intentions behind actions are what determine their karmic results, rather than just the actions themselves. Positive actions driven by compassion, generosity, and wisdom create wholesome karma, leading to happiness and well-being, while negative actions driven by greed, hatred, and ignorance result in suffering and further entanglement in the cycle of samsara, rebirth. Karma is not just a system of rewards and punishments, but a conditioning force that shapes the mind and future experiences. However, it's important to note that karma is not deterministic. Individuals can transform their karmic patterns through mindfulness, ethical conduct, and wisdom, changing the course of their lives. The ultimate goal in Buddhism is to transcend karma entirely by achieving nibbana, nirvana, where one breaks free from the cycle of rebirth and suffering. This is done by eliminating the roots of karma, greed, hatred, and delusion, and realizing the true nature of existence. In Buddhism, the concept of karma centers on intention, meaning it's not just any action that creates karma, but actions driven by a conscious, volitional intention. The Buddha emphasized this point, teaching that karma is intention. It's the mental motivation behind an act, whether that act is carried out through body, speech, or thought. Here's a more in-depth look at what karma as intention entails. Intentions define karma's ethical quality. Actions arise from our underlying motivations, and these intentions determine the ethical weight or quality of the karma we create. Actions rooted in intentions of kindness, generosity, and non-harming generate wholesome karma. Conversely, actions motivated by greed, hatred, or ignorance produce unwholesome karma. For instance, giving a gift out of genuine compassion creates positive karma, but giving for the sake of manipulation or personal gain can produce negative karmic results. The same action, with different intentions, can lead to very different outcomes. Intentions shape mental habits and future behavior. Each time we act with a certain intention, we reinforce that quality within us, making it more likely to shape future behavior. Acting with kindness repeatedly, for example, strengthens kindness in us, forming a mental habit that conditions us to act kindly more naturally. Similarly, if we habitually act from anger or impatience, these qualities grow stronger, becoming ingrained tendencies that create inner turmoil and disharmony. This cumulative nature of intention-driven action is what shapes our personality and character over time. Intentions in mind, speech, and deed. Karma is created not just by physical actions, but also by speech and thoughts. The Buddha taught that words, whether compassionate or hurtful, create karma and shape relationships. Mental actions, such as dwelling on anger or jealousy, likewise generate karmic results and affect our well-being. For example, harboring resentment towards someone generates unwholesome mental karma, creating mental stress and contributing to an ongoing cycle of negative thought patterns. Conversely, cultivating thoughts of gratitude or empathy creates positive karma, nurturing inner peace. Intentional actions and ethical responsibility. Understanding karma as intention places responsibility on our internal motives, making us mindful of the root of our actions. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness and clear comprehension help practitioners notice their underlying motives, allowing them to cultivate wholesome intentions and avoid unwholesome ones. For instance, noticing an impulse to react angrily, but choosing to respond with patience, creates positive karma. This awareness of intention transforms daily actions into opportunities for spiritual growth. Free will and the power to change. The focus on intention also means that karma isn't fate. We have the power to shape our future through present actions. By observing and transforming our intentions, we can consciously cultivate qualities that lead to happiness and reduce suffering. In this way, intention is both the source of karma and the key to freeing ourselves from negative karmic cycles. Through meditation and self-awareness, we gain greater insight into our motives, allowing us to choose responses that align with ethical conduct and compassion, ultimately leading to inner peace and fulfillment. Thus, karma as intention shows that our inner life has a direct impact on our external life and our future. It's a call to develop mindful awareness of our intentions, using them as the basis for a life grounded in ethical clarity, peace, and wisdom. In Buddhism, karma as a conditioning force is the concept that our intentional actions, be they mental, verbal, or physical, shape our experiences and the habitual patterns of our mind over time. Rather than viewing karma as a simple cause-effect dynamic that only results in immediate rewards or punishments, Buddhism teaches that karma influences the conditions of the mind, emotions, and even external circumstances, reinforcing certain mental states and tendencies. Here's a deeper look at how karma functions as a conditioning force. Creating patterns of habitual behavior. When we repeatedly engage in actions with particular intentions, these actions create mental habits. For instance, if we frequently act out of kindness, we are conditioning our minds to naturally incline toward compassion and generosity. This process is cumulative. Each act of kindness strengthens a mental tendency toward caring, making it easier to respond kindly in the future. On the other hand, actions motivated by anger or resentment condition the mind toward these qualities, creating patterns of frustration or dissatisfaction that can affect our entire outlook. Reinforcement of positive or negative mental states. Karma conditions not only our behaviors, but also our mental and emotional states. Positive intentions, like those rooted in compassion or patience, lead to feelings of peace, joy, and contentment. These states reinforce a sense of inner stability and well-being. Conversely, actions driven by negative intentions, such as greed or jealousy, reinforce mental states like anxiety, fear, or frustration. This is why someone who frequently acts with anger or resentment may find themselves in a state of inner turmoil, as their repeated actions condition the mind toward negative mental states. The feedback loop between actions and perception. Karma as a conditioning force also influences how we perceive and respond to our environment. A person who has cultivated patience and kindness will naturally experience their world with greater calmness, seeing situations in a positive or constructive light. By contrast, someone who has conditioned their mind with anger or impatience might perceive even neutral situations as frustrating or upsetting. This feedback loop between actions and perception creates an ongoing cycle where the world is experienced through the lens of one's accumulated karma, reinforcing the initial mental states. Conditioning beyond immediate results. Karma doesn't always produce instant results. Sometimes, the effects of karma may manifest much later, in different forms, or influence the way we react in new situations. Because karma is cumulative, even small actions can build up over time to create significant conditioning. For example, a pattern of lying or deceit may not immediately lead to visible consequences, but can gradually instill feelings of guilt, anxiety, or fear of being exposed. Over time, this erodes trust in relationships, affecting life circumstances indirectly. Impact on future lives and circumstances. In Buddhist cosmology, karma extends beyond this lifetime, influencing future rebirths and life circumstances. The accumulated conditioning from previous actions creates a karmic force that affects the circumstances of future lives. This is not seen as a punishment or reward, but as a continuation of the tendencies, habits, and mental qualities developed in past lives. Positive karma, from compassionate actions, may lead to a more supportive and harmonious environment in the future, while unwholesome karma may bring challenges that reflect past negative conditioning. In essence, karma as a conditioning force is about how intentional actions shape and mold our mental landscape. This concept encourages individuals to mindfully choose actions that cultivate positive mental states, knowing that each choice contributes to their overall life experience and future possibilities. Through understanding karma as a conditioning force, practitioners are motivated to practice ethical behavior and mindfulness, recognizing that each intentional act adds to the trajectory of their mental and spiritual growth. The concept of karma and rebirth in Buddhism is central to understanding the cyclical nature of existence, known as samsara. This cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is driven by karma, which shapes the conditions of one's future lives based on the actions, both mental and physical, accumulated in past lifetimes. Karma and rebirth are deeply intertwined, with karma acting as the force that propels one's consciousness into a new form after death. Here's a more detailed explanation. Karma as a continuity beyond death. In Buddhism, karma refers to the intentional actions through body, speech, and mind that shape one's future experiences. However, it is not seen as a soul or permanent self that passes from life to life. Instead, karma is likened to a stream of consciousness which continues after death, influencing the nature of the next life. After death, the accumulated karma of a person does not disappear, but continues as a force that conditions the next rebirth. Not a soul, but a continuum. Unlike other religious views that posit a soul or eternal self being carried from one life to the next, Buddhism teaches the doctrine of anatta, non-self. There is no permanent self that moves from one body to another. Instead, it is the stream of consciousness that carries forward the results of past actions. The karma, the ethical and mental conditioning accumulated through actions, thoughts, and speech, becomes the fuel for future rebirths. The consciousness is like a flame passed from one candle to another, without the flame being the same, but continuing nonetheless. Karma as the condition for rebirth. The accumulation of wholesome or unwholesome karma sets the stage for the circumstances of future lives. For example, if someone has accumulated a lot of positive karma through virtuous actions, they may be reborn into a favorable situation, such as being born into a human life with opportunities for spiritual practice or in a comfortable environment. Conversely, negative actions, like greed, hatred, or ignorance, may lead to rebirth in one of the lower realms, such as those of animals or hungry ghosts, where suffering predominates. The realms of rebirth. Buddhist teachings describe the cycle of rebirth as taking place in 6 realms, each representing a different type of experience or state of existence. The specific realm one is reborn into depends on the nature of their accumulated karma. Human realm. The human realm is considered a unique and privileged place for spiritual practice. It is a realm of balance, where one can experience suffering and joy, but also have the capacity for deep spiritual growth. The actions of kindness, compassion, wisdom, and morality will typically lead to a human birth in the next life. Heavenly realms. Those who accumulate a large amount of good karma, such as through acts of generosity or compassion, may be reborn in heavenly realms. These beings are said to experience long-lasting happiness, but because the pleasures of these realms are fleeting, they are not free from the cycle of samsara. These realms, while blissful, are still impermanent. Asura realm. Demigods. The Asura realm is populated by beings who experience both great power and jealousy. They may have many privileges, but their lives are filled with conflict, envy, and competition. The Asura realm represents those whose good karma is tempered by negative mental states, like pride and resentment. Animal realm. The animal realm is often associated with ignorance and a lack of free will. Rebirth in this realm typically follows the accumulation of karma that reflects ignorance and instinctual behavior. Animals experience suffering because they are bound by their instincts and cannot engage in spiritual practice. Hungry ghost realm, Preta. This realm is characterized by beings who are driven by insatiable cravings or desires. They are often depicted as having large stomachs and tiny mouths, symbolizing their inability to ever satisfy their deep, unfulfilled desires. The hungry ghost realm represents extreme attachment and craving that leads to suffering. Hell realms, Naraka. The hell realms are the lowest and most painful realms, where beings suffer due to intense negative karma created by violent, harmful, or malicious actions. The suffering in these realms is not eternal. Once the karma has been worked out, beings are reborn in other realms, but the hells represent the intense suffering caused by destructive actions. The realms are not permanent. They represent temporary states of existence shaped by karma. Rebirth can happen in any of these realms, depending on the accumulated karma, and one can move through different realms over successive lifetimes. The key point is that karma is not deterministic in the sense that it fixes one in a particular realm forever. Transformation is possible through mindful actions and spiritual practices. The role of desire and attachment in rebirth. In Buddhism, it is the craving, tanha, and attachment, upadana, that bind beings to the cycle of rebirth. These mental states generate karma, which leads to further rebirths. When one clings to the idea of a permanent self or seeks pleasure through attachment, it creates the conditions for future suffering. The three poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, are the three main causes of suffering and consequently of unwholesome karma. These defilements bind one to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, causing a continuous cycle of reincarnation. For instance, attachment to material wealth or people can create suffering and the desire for a new existence in the next life. Overcoming attachment. The goal in Buddhism is to transcend these attachments, letting go of the craving that ties one to samsara. Through practices like mindfulness, meditation, and ethical living, one can reduce attachment to both worldly desires and the sense of self. This weakening of attachment, in turn, lessens the creation of new karma, leading ultimately to liberation from rebirth, nirvana. Rebirth and the law of causality. Buddhism teaches that karma operates according to the law of causality, cause and effect. This means that every action, whether good, bad, or neutral, produces a corresponding result that conditions future experiences. Thus, rebirth is not random, but rather the outcome of specific causes and conditions. Karma's influence on rebirth. Good karma creates favorable conditions for rebirth, such as a human birth with the ability to practice the Dharma. Unwholesome karma, on the other hand, results in less favorable rebirths. For instance, someone who harms others or is dominated by negative emotions might be reborn in a realm of suffering. This reflects the cause and effect nature of the universe, where actions shape one's future, and the results of past actions inevitably manifest in the future. Interdependence. The law of causality also points to the interdependence of all phenomena. In the case of karma, the idea is that all beings are interconnected through their actions. The actions of one being influence the experiences of others, creating a web of interconnected karmic effects. The more we practice compassion and kindness, the more we create positive karma that benefits not only ourselves, but others as well. The end of the cycle. Liberation from rebirth. The ultimate goal in Buddhism is to liberate oneself from the cycle of rebirth through the cessation of karma. This is achieved by attaining nirvana or nibbana, a state of awakening where one has overcome all attachments, desires, and the mistaken belief in a permanent self. Transcending rebirth. When one reaches enlightenment, all craving ceases, and thus there is no further karma to propel the cycle of rebirth. The noble path of the Buddha, through ethical conduct, meditation, and wisdom, guides one toward the cessation of suffering, and the cycle of samsara is broken. End of the karmic stream. Enlightened beings, such as the Buddha or Arahants, are no longer bound by karma because they have transcended ignorance, the root cause of karmic actions. They act in the world with compassion and wisdom, but no longer generate new karma, thus achieving freedom from the wheel of life, death, and rebirth. In essence, karma and rebirth in Buddhism show the profound interdependence of our actions and their consequences, both in this life and in future lives. The teachings of karma provide a framework for understanding how one's actions shape not only personal experience, but also the very conditions of rebirth, and how spiritual practice offers the possibility of breaking free from this cycle. Free will and transformation, changing one's karma, in Buddhism, is a central and empowering concept. It suggests that, while past karma, our actions, thoughts, and intentions from previous moments, does influence our present experience, we are not bound by it. Karma is not a deterministic force that condemns us to a fixed fate. Instead, Buddhism emphasizes that through free will and intentional practice, we can change our karmic trajectory and free ourselves from negative patterns. Here's a more detailed explanation: the power of present actions. In Buddhism, the present moment is where we have the greatest power. Although past karma, from previous lives or earlier in the current life, has shaped us, the choices we make right now can reshape our future. The Buddha taught that it's not the past that defines us, but our intentions and actions in the present. This means that no matter how negative your past karma may have been, every moment offers the possibility to choose differently, to act with mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion. Karma is dynamic, not fixed. The Buddha made it clear that while past actions do have consequences, they do not dictate our future in a rigid way. If someone has a history of harmful actions, they still have the freedom to make different choices moving forward. For example, if someone has caused harm due to anger in the past, they can now choose to respond with patience and understanding. By doing so, they generate wholesome karma that can gradually overwrite past unwholesome actions. Example in practice: a person who has struggled with a tendency toward greed or selfishness might initially find it difficult to act out of generosity. However, if they intentionally practice acts of generosity, even small ones, they can cultivate new patterns of thought and behavior. Over time, these new actions build positive karma, transforming the person's tendencies and the way they relate to others. Transforming the mind through mindfulness and meditation. Buddhism teaches that mindfulness, sati, and meditation are powerful tools for transforming one's karma. When we cultivate awareness of our thoughts, feelings, and actions, we begin to recognize habitual patterns of behavior that are rooted in unwholesome karma. With this awareness, we have the opportunity to interrupt these patterns and choose to respond in a more mindful, ethical way. Mindfulness of intention. Mindfulness doesn't just apply to our external actions. It also involves being aware of our inner mental states. By paying attention to the motives behind our thoughts and actions, we can redirect them when necessary. For example, if we notice anger arising, we can choose not to act on it or transform it into patience through mindfulness. By regularly practicing this awareness, we can gradually change negative mental habits into positive ones. Meditation as a path to mental purification. Meditation practices like insight meditation, vipassana, help practitioners see the impermanent and interdependent nature of thoughts and emotions. Understanding that thoughts and emotions arise due to causes and conditions, and are not permanent or fixed, helps one to break free from attachment to harmful mental states. This recognition leads to a purification of the mind, where negative mental formations, such as greed, hatred, and ignorance, are gradually eradicated, and wholesome qualities like love, compassion, and wisdom are cultivated. Changing the karmic path. Buddhist teachings emphasize that karma is not just about past deeds, but is also about ongoing mental and emotional patterns. Through intentional effort, we can change these patterns. This means that even if we have accumulated negative karma in the past, we are not doomed to experience suffering indefinitely. Through ethical behavior, mindful practice, and cultivating positive qualities, we can gradually transform our karmic imprint. The role of ethical conduct. Ethical conduct is a cornerstone of transforming karma. By engaging in actions that align with the 5 precepts, non-harming, truthfulness, refraining from stealing, abstaining from harmful substances, and engaging in responsible sexual conduct, one can purify their actions and create positive karmic outcomes. Over time, these actions lead to a more peaceful and harmonious existence, breaking free from the cycles of negative karma. Example of transformation. A person who has harmed others in the past, either through physical actions, speech, or thoughts, can create positive karma through acts of repentance, forgiveness, and service. If they commit themselves to helping others, practicing patience, and engaging in loving kindness, metta, their future will begin to reflect these more compassionate actions. Breaking free from habitual karma. One of the most important teachings of Buddhism regarding karma is that karma is habitual. That means the more we act with certain intentions, the more those actions become ingrained patterns. However, the very nature of habit suggests that it can be broken. If we've been conditioned by unwholesome habits, anger, jealousy, greed, we can choose to cultivate positive mental habits, compassion, joy, generosity, that eventually become second nature. Changing karmic tendencies. A key aspect of transforming karma is changing the mental tendencies that cause unwholesome actions. By engaging in loving-kindness meditation or other compassion-building practices, we can counteract old patterns of judgment or aversion. The Buddha emphasized that over time, negative mental states such as anger, fear, and pride lose their strength when countered by practices that cultivate clarity, understanding, and compassion. Transforming through understanding. Buddhism encourages insight into impermanence and non-self as a way to overcome attachments and aversions that drive karmic patterns. Realizing that all things, including emotions, are transient, can lessen the intensity of our reactions, allowing us to act more wisely and with less attachment to the results. The freedom to create new karma. Ultimately, Buddhism teaches that we are not prisoners of our past. The power of free will means that every moment offers an opportunity to create new karma, for better or worse. When we live with awareness and intention, we can actively choose to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness, breaking free from old patterns and shifting toward a more enlightened way of living. Liberation through transformation. The practice of transforming karma is integral to the path of enlightenment. It is through this gradual purification of the mind and transformation of negative tendencies that one becomes free from the cycle of rebirth, samsara, and reaches nirvana. The ultimate freedom in Buddhism is the realization that one's past actions are not a prison. They are opportunities for growth and liberation. In summary, the concept of free will and transformation, changing one's karma, offers an empowering view of personal responsibility. While we may be shaped by past actions, each moment provides the potential to change. Through mindfulness, ethical practice, and the cultivation of positive mental qualities, we have the ability to alter our karmic path and gradually create a life filled with peace, wisdom, and compassion. Karma and liberation, nibbana, are intimately connected in Buddhist teachings. To understand this relationship, we must first recognize that karma refers to the intentional actions we perform, which can either bind us to the cycle of suffering and rebirth, samsara, or lead us toward nibbana, nirvana, the ultimate goal of liberation from that cycle. The role of karma in samsara. In Buddhism, the cycle of samsara is the continuous process of birth, death, and rebirth driven by karma. When a person acts with greed, hatred, and delusion, the three root defilements, they accumulate unwholesome karma. This unwholesome karma creates suffering and perpetuates the cycle of rebirth, trapping the individual in a state of continual dissatisfaction and craving. Each new life is shaped by the karma of previous lives, and until a person purifies their actions, they remain caught in this cycle. Karma as a force that perpetuates suffering. Every action rooted in craving for pleasure, security, or self-identity, or aversion, hatred, or fear, strengthens the bond to samsara, creating a cycle of desire and suffering. For example, if one acts out of anger, the resulting karma leads to future suffering, either in this life or in future rebirths. Purification of karma through ethical practice and wisdom. The path to nibbana involves purifying one's karma by transforming the mind. The Buddha taught that through ethical conduct, meditation, samadhi, and wisdom, panya, a practitioner can gradually weaken and eliminate the roots of suffering. Ethical conduct, engaging in good deeds, following the 5 precepts, and practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood help purify one's karma. By avoiding actions that harm others, such as killing, stealing, or lying, a person reduces the accumulation of negative karma and develops wholesome qualities like compassion and generosity. Samadhi, concentration. Meditation practices help calm the mind and create the necessary mental conditions for wisdom to arise. By developing deep concentration, such as the jhanas or states of meditative absorption, one can gain insights into the nature of reality, overcoming the distractions that keep the mind trapped in unwholesome patterns. Panya, wisdom. Wisdom in Buddhism is the understanding of the impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta, nature of existence. Through mindfulness and insight meditation, vipassana, practitioners see that all things, including themselves, are transient and without inherent existence. This wisdom helps sever the attachment to self and desire, which are the root causes of suffering and karma. The cessation of karma and the end of rebirth. Nibbana is achieved when an individual has completely eradicated the defilements of the mind, greed, hatred, and delusion. This liberates the mind from the creation of new karma, which means that no more actions arise from craving or aversion. Essentially, the attachment to future existence is eliminated, and the individual no longer generates karma that binds them to samsara. End of the karmic cycle. Once a person reaches the state of enlightenment, they no longer create the causes for future suffering or rebirth. Since they no longer act out of craving, they no longer accumulate unwholesome karma. This is often described as the end of the karmic cycle. There is no longer a need for rebirth because the root causes of the cycle have been eradicated, the cessation of desire and self. In Nibbana, one realizes the impermanent and non-self nature of all things, including one's own existence. This realization ends attachment to a permanent identity or ego. The desire for existence, the fear of non-existence, and all forms of attachment that sustain the cycle of rebirth are extinguished. Liberation and Nibbana. In a liberated state, the enlightened being acts with complete compassion, wisdom, and equanimity, but their actions are not driven by personal attachment or ego. They experience freedom from suffering and peace, because they are no longer bound by the desires, fears, or attachments that create karmic actions. Freedom from suffering. In Nibbana, there is no more craving or aversion. Suffering is caused by attachment, and once attachment is fully understood and eliminated, there is no more suffering. This is the ultimate peace, often described as blissful and unconditioned. No more creation of karma. Since the enlightened being no longer creates karma in the traditional sense, they are beyond the effects of good or bad actions in the conventional sense. Their actions, motivated by wisdom and compassion, do not bind them to samsara. The concept of Arahant and Buddha. In Buddhist tradition, there are two main types of beings who achieve Nibbana: Arahants and Buddhas. Arahants are individuals who have reached full enlightenment through their practice. They have eliminated all defilements and are free from the cycle of rebirth. They may still live out their remaining years, but after death, they will not be reborn. Buddhas are beings who have attained full enlightenment, but also share their wisdom with others, teaching the Dharma and helping others reach liberation. While both Buddhas and Arahants have reached Nibbana, a Buddha's role is to guide others toward the same goal. The relationship between karma and Nibbana is central to Buddhist practice. Karma, through intention and action, creates the conditions for either suffering or peace. However, by understanding and transforming karma through ethical behavior, meditation, and wisdom, an individual can achieve liberation, Nibbana. In Nibbana, the individual transcends the cycle of karma, as they no longer create new karmic actions driven by attachment or ignorance. This leads to freedom from suffering, the cessation of rebirth, and ultimate peace. Thus, karma is not only the cause of suffering, but also the path to liberation when understood and transformed. In conclusion, karma is a central concept in Buddhism that serves both as a tool for understanding the nature of suffering and as a means of personal transformation. It helps practitioners recognize how their actions, driven by intention, shape not only their present circumstances, but also their future experiences, including their future lives. By understanding the law of karma, individuals can gain insight into the origins of suffering in their lives, particularly how negative emotions such as greed, hatred, and ignorance create the conditions for dissatisfaction and pain. Karma reveals that suffering is not an external punishment, but a result of internal causes, our own actions, choices, and mental habits. This recognition empowers individuals to take responsibility for their own actions and cultivate positive habits that reduce suffering, both for themselves and for others. Beyond understanding suffering, karma also serves as a pathway for personal transformation. It teaches that through conscious, ethical actions, mindfulness, and wisdom, individuals can actively shape their future in more positive and constructive ways. By cultivating intentions of kindness, compassion, and wisdom, a person can gradually purify their mind and reduce the accumulation of negative karma. This process of self-improvement leads to an inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. Moreover, as practitioners become more aware of the impermanence and interconnectedness of all things, they are able to break free from the cycle of attachment and craving that binds them to samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Ultimately, karma guides practitioners toward enlightenment and liberation, Nibbana, by showing that through intentional transformation, it is possible to free oneself from the karmic cycle altogether. As one eliminates the root causes of karma, greed, hatred, and delusion, they begin to experience a profound shift in consciousness, where they no longer generate suffering-producing actions. This ultimate state of liberation, where one is no longer bound by karma, is characterized by wisdom, compassion, and equanimity, qualities that bring lasting peace and freedom from the cycle of rebirth. Thus, karma in Buddhism is not merely a concept to explain cause and effect, but a dynamic force that can be transformed through conscious effort, leading to profound personal growth and the ultimate liberation from suffering.